49.1 million Americans live in food-insecure households. Southeast Raleigh has been deemed a food desert by the United States Department of Agriculture because it is a low-income area with limited access to fresh, nutritious foods nearby. Many impoverished families in the area have recently experienced increased food insecurity due to the exit of 2 Kroger grocery stores from the area in 2012. Now, the only grocery stores in Southeast Raleigh are 2 Food Lions, which are located about 5 miles away from each other. Many citizens in the downtown urban area of Southeast Raleigh do not have cars, so some people have to walk 5 miles to the grocery store, making this predicament even tougher. In order to learn more about food deserts, especially in North Carolina, and to educate the public on this pressing issue, I sat down with several people to discuss their knowledge of the food insecurity crisis and possible solutions to this issue.
Hi, I'm here with Ms. Budzinski, who's the AP Human Geography teacher here, and we're going to ask her some questions about food deserts, how it relates to the environmental effects, and also geographically. Okay. So, can you explain just what are food deserts?
Sure. So food deserts are just places. We find them a lot of times mostly in the developed world, and there are areas where we see a lack of nutritious options, and so maybe you'll see fast food restaurants, or maybe you'll see convenience stores or gas stations where they have foods and snacks, but you don't see very many nutritious options for the people that live there.
Okay, and what are some causes that lead to areas becoming food deserts?
So there's lots of causes, and they're pretty complex. They're going to kind of interact and play off each other often. Typically we see it to be low-income areas, right? And because it's low-income areas, these people are not spending or don't have as much money to spend. And so if you're, a developer or somebody trying to figure out where you want to put your grocery store, then you're obviously going to want to put it in the places most profitable to you. And so most of the times these low-income areas, are not going to be the most profitable places for these grocery stores. And so a lot of times they won't put those options there. Also, more healthy food options are often, healthy food restaurants are going to be more expensive as well. And so if you're looking for a place to put those, you're also not going to want to, typically, if you're looking for profit, which businesses are, you're not typically going to want to put those in lower income areas. So it leaves these gaps in these neighborhoods where they don't have access to these places. And of course, also if you're thinking about low income, then a lot of times people might not have cars as well to get to those further places to access those foods.
Mm-hmm. And how have some commercial development trends affected the increase of food deserts in certain areas?
I'm sorry, will you repeat the
How
question?
has commercial development in certain areas impacted the number of food deserts?
Sure. So because we see especially since the 50s and 60s, or after World War II, with the increase of interstates, we see tons of urban sprawl. And so not only is there more commercial development or more concentrated development, but it's also increased the amount of it, so it's getting bigger and bigger. And with that increase of commercial development, we're seeing less areas for farmland. And with less area for farmland, obviously it's harder to get those crops to those cities, or you're going to have to travel further, which also is going to increase the price of those crops because you're having to pay for the travel time and the gas and all those types of things that would go into it. So with the increase of development overall, the harder it is to get those fresh foods as well. The less green space there is, and so people maybe don't have a place to, if they wanted to farm on their own, maybe that they could.
And how has the land been impacted by the development that's happening?
Well, obviously there's lots of pollution, and then obviously with the development we see lots of erosion and things like that. They're gonna be bad for the farmland, of course.
Mm-hmm. And then where are food deserts typically located and why? And could you maybe give some examples?
Yeah, so they are typically kind of what I was saying before. They're located in low-income areas. Unfortunately, oftentimes we see a lot of minority areas as well. And this is a lot of times from historical patterns, like real estate practices like redlining, which that human geography kids are familiar with. Basically, the idea of a lot of times real estate practices back in the 50s and 60s, they're going to try to concentrate minorities in certain areas. And so unfortunately, we still see some of those patterns still exist today. And obviously that has changed in some capacity, but unfortunately because of that, we do see it often in minority areas, we see it in low-income areas and things like that. As far as nationally, kind of one of the biggest examples is South Central LA, or South LA. And then close by, we see food deserts in Durham, or in parts of Durham. And then also, one actually really close to my house is Southeast Raleigh. It's considered a food desert. And it's actually really interesting. I live kind of on the edge of Southeast Raleigh, and so if you go anywhere west and if you go anywhere north, you'll see tons and tons of grocery stores and even like urban gardens and things like that. If you go anywhere south or anywhere east, you will not find hardly any grocery stores. You'll see gas stations, but not very many grocery stores.
Okay. And then what kinds of food do people usually resort to in food deserts?
Sure. So the thing is that the reason why I mentioned it's typically in the developed world is because food deserts, the automatic thought, at least when I say it in our class, is like places where no one can find any food. And that's not exactly the case. It's in the developed world because it's in places where maybe they have, they have large development, they have maybe technology, and they have what we would think to be access to things to eat, but they're just not good options to eat. So it's things like maybe things that have a lot of preservatives, things that aren't going to perish.
In order to help reduce the negative effects of the food desert in Southeast Raleigh, several nonprofit organizations and ministries are working to provide fresh, healthy food at an affordable cost for local residents. The Galley Grocery was recently opened in 2014 by two pastors in Raleigh as a nonprofit local outlet for residents to shop for fresh fruits and vegetables, with some sweets stashed in the back. The small store was opened to serve a neighborhood in Southeast Raleigh that had no grocery store within 2 miles. A local farmer grows and brings produce to the store, and through donations, they are able to keep the cost down. The store also partners with a nonprofit called Bread of Life, a truck that carries fresh, free produce to households in need.
So I am the Camden Street Learning Garden Coordinator. My name is Rihanna Hawkins. Here we go.
All right.